It is well past time to break up Jacob Trouba and K'Andre Miller.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1045 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Indeed. Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That is why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Visit Indeed.com/LockedOn to start hiring now. Terms and conditions apply. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the Rangers turning in one of their more lackluster performances of the season. It's right up there. It's probably on the Mount Rushmore of poor Rangers showings in a game this season. I see a lot of people freaking out about it. I'm not going to go that far. There were some things in this game that were a little bit concerning. Obviously, you hope for a nice bounce-back performance against the Islanders on Saturday. I think that could be just what the doctor ordered. You know, obviously, the temperature rose between those two teams in their last meeting, and I think a high-intensity game would be a good thing for the Rangers right now because the intensity just was not there from the Blue Shirts in this home clash with the Flyers. They, of course, fall 4-1. Just not sharp. Not playing with a whole lot of urgency, certainly not playing with physicality until, the third period. It picked up a little bit, but that was too little too late at that point. I think the final score of this game, 4-1 Flyers, that's pretty indicative of the way that this game went. And I just got to say, this has not been a banner couple of games, these last two games specifically, for the Ranger Blue Liners. I don't really think that any of the Ranger defensemen are at the top of their game right now, or at least these last two games. I don't want to go crazy and make it sound like this has been going on for weeks and weeks and weeks and months and months. It's nothing like that. I mean, there's fans right now that think the sky is falling because they had one lackluster showing. Honestly, even the game against the Islanders, they didn't play that bad. A little bit of a slow start. Just came up a little bit short, and that does happen from time to time. But something that I thought was interesting, talking about the defensemen here, the Rangers, went with a couple of different defense pairings during practice. We saw at practice a top pairing of Erik Gustafsson and Adam Fox, or at least this is the order they were listed. Erik Gustafsson and Adam Fox, K'Andre Miller and Braden Schneider, and then finally Ryan Lindgren and Jacob Trouba. It's not my favorite defensive alignment that they could potentially go with, but I think that at the very least, it does something that I think is long overdue. I talked about it just a second ago in the intro. We're going to elaborate on it more a little bit later in today's episode. But yeah, Miller and Trouba, those two need to be broken up. And such an alignment that they went with in practice, that would at least accomplish that. For the game, though, it was back to basically the tried and true lineup. And that is, of course, Lindgren and Fox top pairing, Miller Trouba second pairing, Gustafsson and Schneider on the third pairing. My personal preference right now, you can stick with Lindgren and Fox. I've always liked those two together, and I don't think that they've ever really had like that bad of a stretch together. Obviously every defenseman's going to go through a funk every once in a while, but for the most part, those two have been great together ever since they, started playing together several seasons ago. So we stick with them. We go with Miller and Schneider. Those two really had a lot of success together when Jacob Trouba, and for that matter, Erik Gustafsson, were both out of the lineup. And for my third pairing, I'm going with Zack Jones over Erik Gustafsson. I've got Jones with Trouba. Trouba right now is just kind of a mess. And he's been back for 7 games now. I gave him a fair chance. I wasn't going to rush to a judgment after, 2 shifts into his first game back after missing almost a month. But we're 7 games into Jacob Trouba's return. We've got the playoffs right around the corner here. And it really hasn't gotten much better. In fact, it's gotten worse. Jacob Trouba, his last 2 games, is probably about as bad as we've seen him play pretty much all season. So I got to knock him down to the third pairing. And again, doing that allows Miller and Schneider to play together. And I don't want to make it sound like, the two of them, that they were awful all season until they put them together. But that's not the case. But both of them were at their absolute best when they were together. And I think you have to take notice of that if you're Peter Laviolette and this coaching staff. But yeah, I mean, the defensemen in general just, just not defending the rush well. that issue seems to be creeping back in. This is a good test against the Flyers, who apparently are very good on the rush. The Sam and Joe were mentioning that a couple of times during the broadcast, and the proof was in the pudding. They scored a couple of goals off the rush. They, created some scoring chances off the rush, and just not enough resistance from the Ranger defensemen. I thought some of the defensemen were a little bit sloppy with the puck, a few too many turnovers in this game as well. And I also have to say, I mentioned Zack Jones a minute ago. It's getting to the point where it is obscene that he's the healthy scratch right now. I've tried to be patient and understanding here when it comes to Zack Jones. And, you see the Rangers obviously start to get healthy. Lindgren missed some time. Trouba missed some time. Gustafsson missed a handful of games as well, and Zack Jones got in there and he got to play and obviously did very well. And at first it was like, well, it's just a tough break for Zack Jones because when everybody's healthy, he's going to be the seventh defenseman, and that's just the way it is. But honestly, why does it have to be that way? Like, Zack Jones, the bottom line is he's outplayed just about every defenseman on this Ranger team, or at least he was outplaying them when he was actually on the ice and dressed and active for games. And obviously that hasn't been the case over the last couple of games here. But if you take away, if you take all the Ranger defensemen and you take away the name, the name recognition, you take away contract status and who's got the letter on their jersey and this, that, and the other thing. If you just strip everything away and you just look at, okay, who has played the best out of all these defensemen, Zack Jones is very near the top of that list. And for him to not be in the lineup right now and be sitting in favor of guys that just don't look good at all, that's rough. And look, I know there's some people that with Zack Jones, one of their big concerns is that he's not very big. In fact, he's on the small side for NHL defensemen. You know what? It doesn't matter. He's earned the right to play. And I know, the playoffs are right around the corner and you got to be big and tough and physical and all this stuff. Fine. But not every NHL defenseman is 6'6", and not every NHL defenseman who's not 6'6" has failed to achieve any success in their NHL careers. Zack Jones, the bottom line is he has outplayed a lot of his Ranger teammates and he deserves to be in the lineup. And honestly, if that happens, let's go back to what I just said a second ago. I said that if you take away, name recognition and status and contracts and all that stuff, Jacob Trouba has played worse than any other Ranger defenseman. He would be the odd man out. We know that's not going to happen. And it probably shouldn't happen because he is the Ranger captain. They need their leader out there, et cetera, et cetera. He does still have that physical, presence. And certainly he's capable of playing a heck of a lot better than he's played since returning from injury. But really, I guess I'll just have to settle for Zack Jones being in there instead of Erik Gustafsson, because I don't think any other Ranger defenseman is coming out of this lineup under any circumstances. I don't think that Gustafsson, he hasn't been great lately. I don't think he's been terrible either, but Zack Jones needs to be in this lineup. He's earned that opportunity, and I hope that they use these last two regular season games to at least give him another chance, at least put him out there, at least see how he continues to play. If he goes out there and kills it these last two games, if he's active for both of them, how do you keep this guy out of the playoff lineup? Especially when some other guys scuffling a little bit. And it hasn't gone on for a long time, as I mentioned. It's only the last couple of games here, but bottom line is Jones is outplaying a lot of his Ranger teammates right now, and he's the healthy scratch and the odd man out, and that's just unfortunate. And we'll see if they decide to alter course, and maybe Zack Jones is out there for game one of the playoffs, whoever the Rangers might be playing. And obviously we'll wait and see who their opponent is going to be. But I got to keep everything rolling. We got to focus in very specifically on Jacob Trouba and K'Andre Miller because this pairing has clearly seen better days. There's times where they've been great together, but not recently. And we're going to talk about the two of them in just a second. First, though, we definitely would like to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Policygenius. Policygenius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. It saves you time and money so you can provide for your family with a financial safety net starting today. With Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Policygenius helps you compare your options from top companies, and their team of licensed experts is on hand to help talk you through it. Talk to a team of award-winning agents who will walk you through the process step by step. Your work-life insurance policy may not offer enough protection for your family's needs. Even worse, it may not come with you if you leave your job. Check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policygenius. Head to polygenius.com/LockedOnNHL or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's polygenius.com/LockedOnNHL. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? have to turn down the volume with all that shouting, make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here. And my opinion, very humble opinion, that it is well past time to break up Jacob Trouba and K'Andre Miller. Whatever the Rangers do with their defense pairings, I want to see these two on different pairings. I'm not so sure I'm going to get my wish because they seem pretty committed to keeping those two together. I'll live with Erik Gustafsson playing in this lineup over Zack Jones. I would prefer Jones to be out there. I don't think I'm going to get my wish there, though. Again, I'll live with it. At least with Gustafsson, you can say he's got more experience, and there are times this season where he's played very well. If you want to put Gustafsson and Fox together on the same pairing as they did in practice, again, it's not my top preference, but I'll live with it because at least with that pairing, you can go with Miller and Schneider, who played very well together, and you can go with Trouba and Lindgren together, and that's always been kind of an intriguing duo because they both play kind of a gritty, hard-hitting, old-school style of hockey, and we do see the two of them together on penalty kills very often, so it's not like they've got no experience together. I can live with such an alignment if that's what the Rangers want to do, but I am done with K'Andre Miller and Jacob Trouba on the same pairing. Even before Trouba got injured, these two together had probably at best an up-and-down season. Now, there's times where they played very well. I thought they got off to a good start technically, yes, last year, 2023, the start of this season, though. I thought they got off to a really nice start together. The year before that, it was kind of the opposite. They got off to a miserable start together, and then they picked it up a little bit later. But they're kind of up and down. And, since Jacob Trouba's been back, he's been a big liability for this team. I want to take a look at plus-minus stats for both of these players since Trouba's return. And I feel like I always got to do this disclaimer here when we're talking about plus-minus. It's not a perfect stat, but it's also not nothing. I think there are some things you can learn from plus minus. And I think that a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times, plus minus is indicative of how it's going for a certain line, a certain defense pairing, whatever it might be. So Jacob Trouba, back for 7 games, no points in that time. He is a -6 in the 7 games since he returned. And only once in those 7 games has he been a plus. He was a +1 in the win against Detroit. K'Andre Miller in that same time, also a -6. He, too, has only been a plus once in those 7 games. That came against Montreal. He was a +1 for that one. And as far as points are concerned, Miller only has 1 point in that time since Jacob Trouba came back into the lineup, and he's only got, it was an assist, and that assist is his only point in his last 12 games. Just wanted to throw that out there as well. And I know with defensemen, going through a point drought is a little more forgivable if you're going out there and playing good defense, but they're not. They're just not. Anybody that watches these games can tell you that pairing right now is a liability, and certainly that was on display against the Flyers. Rough night for both of them, especially Miller. Miller was a -3. Trouba was a -2. And Miller, man, he just didn't look sharp. He just didn't look engaged to me. Get a handful of plays in this game where I'm just not sure what's going on. The Flyers took a 1-0 lead. They score on the rush, and Miller, probably his worst shift it's got to be up there. One of his worst shifts of the season. But basically, you've got the Flyers breaking out on the rush. Konechny basically gets right past Miller up the right side, kind of winning the foot race against him through the neutral zone. And Miller's trying to catch up. And then Konechny hits the brakes and kind of circles back. And Miller wipes out and falls to the ice when this happens. Obviously, now Konechny's got no pressure on him and nothing to stop him from making a perfect pass across the ice to York. That's exactly what he did. York scores 1-0 Flyers. And then second period, this is a little bit of a bad break, but you can't have this happening either. You've got the Flyers, they're in the Rangers zone. They're buzzing a little bit. You got Brink making a pass in deep. Poehling tips it in, 2-1 Flyers at that point. And that time they were in for good. I misspoke there, though. Initially, it looked like Poehling tipped it in, or at least glanced off of Poehling, but it first hit K'Andre Miller's his stick blade. He was trying to make a play, deflects off of him. And like I said, watching the live play, I thought maybe it caught like a little bit of Poehling, but apparently it didn't because the goal was given to Brink. And, obviously it's off of K'Andre Miller's stick and into the net, so that's not good either. And then not too long after this in the second period, K'Andre Miller called for boarding against Konechny. And again, he just seemed a little bit out of it in this game. He just didn't look focused, didn't look sharp. I don't know if the Rangers know where they are in their standings and they're taking their foot off the gas just a little bit, but obviously you can't do that. There's a Flyer team that I believe coming into this game had lost 7 in a row. They had a game against Montreal where they were down 6-0. I don't even know what the final score of that game turned out to be, but lost 7 in a row. Some of them were in overtime or the shootout, but regardless, still 7 straight losses. And the Rangers out there making them look like world beaters. And that's obviously not a good thing. I know they were desperate and everything, but the Rangers in general failed to match that desperation. Like I said, a really rough night for the Ranger defenseman, a really rough night for the Miller and Trouba pairing. And I hate to say this too, but Miller's downturn basically started when Jacob Trouba returned to the lineup. Like I said, he was playing very well with Braden Schneider, and I just feel like we got to get that pairing back together, and sooner rather than later, because there's only 2 games left, and then you got to go into the playoffs and figure it out on the fly at that point. So, and Trouba wasn't a whole lot better. He had just an unforgivable turnover at the blue line. This happened kind of in garbage time in the third period. You know, at this point, it was 4-1 Flyers, and it was getting pretty late, but it was the same spot as the game against the Islanders, and basically the same thing happened. A puck that Trouba should be able to handle, and for one reason or another, just not able to do so. It gets by him, and in this case, in the game against the Islanders, he had to take a penalty to prevent a breakaway. In this game against the Flyers, he ends up, having the guy go right past him. There's a breakaway. Jonathan Quick was able to make the save, but regardless, obviously, not a banner night for Jacob Trouba. He took a penalty in this game as well. And, again, I don't want to make it sound like this pairing, K'Andre Miller and Jacob Trouba, it can't possibly work. They're just two guys, the elements don't mix, basically. I don't want to make it sound like that. We've seen these two play some great hockey together in the past, but it's been a while since we've seen that. And we certainly haven't seen it since Jacob Trouba returned to the lineup. K'Andre Miller in the past he's talked very highly of Jacob Trouba. He's talked about how, you get the feeling he almost sees him as kind of like a big brother. He's talked about how Jacob Trouba has helped him with his transition to the NHL and just helped him get used to, the entire experience of playing in the league, helped him with his confidence. Fine. That's awesome. It's great to hear stuff like that. It's cool that these guys care for each other. They watch out for each other. They build each other up. That's awesome. That's something that I think has been very true of the players in this Ranger locker room the last handful of seasons here. I do think it's a very tight-knit bunch, and that's awesome to hear. Great. You know what? It's not working recently. It hasn't worked, really before Trouba got hurt, and certainly not since he's been back. There's times, again, where they played very well together. This is not one of those times, and it is time to break them up before it's too late and before these two, cost the Rangers a playoff game or several playoff games. That's not going to be good at all. Obviously, there's times, and I wonder if maybe this is happening right now, where I do think it's possible you almost get a little bit too comfortable with the guy that you're playing with. In this case, defensemen. So you've got one defense partner, forwards. It's two different, line mates that you're out there with. I think there's times where that can happen. You get almost a little bit too comfortable. Maybe if Miller is with Schneider and maybe if Trouba is with Jones, they're both on their toes a little bit more and a little bit sharper and just a little bit more focused. You got to, get used to somebody that you haven't played with a whole lot, And I just said Trouba and Jones. That's probably going to be Trouba and Gustafsson, but my point still stands the same. I think it just puts you back on your toes a little bit in a good way and makes sure that you're sharp and focused and into the game. And I'd like to see that. Do I think the Rangers are going to do it? Probably not. They seem pretty committed to this being the defense pairings. And I haven't talked too much badly about Laviolette and his lineup choices. Every now and then I'd like to see this guy as the 12th forward instead of that guy. And why is that guy a healthy scratch? And maybe this guy should be on the third line instead of the fourth line. But I haven't gotten all worked up about it because look at what the Rangers have done this season. They have the best record in the NHL. It might be second best now because I know Dallas has been winning a lot. But bottom line, they've had an excellent season. And, I'm not going to get all worked up about, a small lineup change or another. But this one to me feels like it really, really needs to happen. And I'm going to be curious if it does happen. If not, then Miller and Trouba are going to have to figure it out or that will be a problem come playoff time. Going to keep everything rolling in just a second. I want to talk a little bit about some of the extracurriculars in this game and call the Rangers out for being too soft in this game. We are not talking about the season as a whole. There's people that'll make you believe that the Rangers are, one of the most finesse soft teams in the league. It's simply not true by any eye test or any metric. But for one night at least, the people that have that opinion, you can certainly make that case. I thought the Rangers played this game too soft. Certainly not enough physicality against the Flyers. We're going to talk about that and a whole bunch of other stuff in just a second. But first, definitely want to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Indeed. When you're drafting your fantasy team, do you ever wish you could handpick the best stars for your business team? If you're building your talent roster, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. Find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like matching, assessments, and virtual interviews. Hate waiting? Indeed's US data shows over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description. Join over 3 million businesses worldwide using Indeed to hire great talent fast. Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Visit Indeed.com/lockedon to start hiring right now. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon, Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is also brought to you by Factor. Eat stress-free this spring with Factor's delicious, ready-to-eat meals. Every fresh, never frozen meal is chef-crafted, dietitian-approved, and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. Choose from a weekly menu of 35 options, including popular options like Calorie Smart, Keto, Protein Plus, or Vegan and Veggie. Also discover more than 60 add-ons every week, like breakfast, on-the-go lunch, snacks, and beverages to help you stay fueled and feel good all day long. What are you waiting for? Get started today and fuel up your springtime goals. Get chef-prepared meals on the table in 2 minutes with Factor's ready-to-eat meals so you can get back to what you love doing this spring. We're celebrating Earth Month all month long. Look out for the Earth Month Eats badge on the menu for our lowest carbon footprint meals. Head to factormeals.com/lockedonnhl50 and use code LOCKEDONNHL50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next box. That's code LOCKEDONNHL50 at factormeals.com/lockedonnhl50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next box while your subscription is active. Okay, let's keep everything rolling. Let's go ahead and talk about how the Rangers played a little bit too soft in this game. And again, big picture, I don't think that's the case at all with this Ranger team. There are people that'll have you believe, like I said, that they're just constantly pushed around and they're constantly losing because of that. I mean, first of all, they're not constantly losing. I mean, just look at their record this season. I don't really know where that perception comes from. The last time I looked up this stat, the Rangers were 7th in the NHL in hits per game. They have fallen down to 9th. But again, you're in the top third as far as physical teams in the league. And for one night, and again, only one night, I do think that was the case. I thought the Rangers were a little too soft in this one, just not physically engaged in this game. They were only out hit by the Flyers 18-17, so it's not like the Flyers had a massive advantage there. But again, just not physically engaged, not making things difficult enough. The Flyers had basically free reign to get to the net, to get over the Ranger blue line, et cetera, et cetera. The Rangers, in fact, only had 7 hits through the first 2 periods. And eventually, the intensity and the hitting did pick up for the Rangers, but it was too little too late at that point. I just want to highlight kind of everything that happened to lead up to that point in the game. So we'll start with late in the second period here. You've got Jonathan Quick basically getting roundhouse kicked in the head by Garnett Hathaway, and Quick went back at him right away. They ended up getting matching minors. Ryan Lindgren and Barclay Goodrow both tried to get after Hathaway. Goodrow was looking to fight him. So yeah, basically, Hathaway is in the crease there, and it looks like he's off balance. Next thing you know, I believe it was his left skate goes up into the air and kind of is near the head and the neck and the face area of Jonathan Quick, and that's obviously very dangerous. And let me just say, let's hope. And for now, I will give him the benefit of the doubt, even though he's an agitator and he's a pain to play against. There's a lot of players in the NHL that fit that description. I'm not going to sit here and say that Hathaway did this on purpose. Difficult to say for sure. Hard to prove intent. If he did this on purpose, it is one of the worst things I have ever seen in an NHL game. And again, I don't think he did. But if he did, and only he knows for sure, we said the same thing about Pelech, with the hit on Mika, only he knows for sure if he did it on purpose or not. But to, do something aggressive with your skate, I mean, this is not Happy Gilmore here, okay? That's very dangerous, and there are real life repercussions. If your skate is up high and getting near the face and the neck and the, head area of an opponent. So again, I really hope that was an accident. And for the time being, we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. We'll assume that it was. Even still, it was very dangerous. Quick didn't like it either. Garnett Hathaway started to skate away, and Quick kind of slashed at his shin and tripped him down to the ice. So we end up with 4-on-4, the matching minors. And Goodrow wasn't done with Hathaway. He still wanted to get a piece of him. We got to the end of the second period, and the horn blew, and Goodrow basically cross-checked Hathaway really hard, kind of in the back area. and was trying to get after him, and big scrum, everybody gets together. Goodrow and Sanheim were then going at it. And then you see Hathaway. He was less engaged in this scrum than any other skater on the ice for either team. So bravo. You roundhouse kick our goalie, whether it's on purpose or not, even if it's an accident. And then, you're not afraid, or you are afraid to, I guess, mix up with Barclay Goodrow at the end of the period. But anyway, Goodrow ends up getting a penalty for this. So obviously the Rangers start the third period shorthanded. And this is where the intensity and the fire and the urgency and certainly the physicality picked up a little bit for the Rangers. The only problem is it just didn't last very long. But you get the Flyers on the power play, start the third period. Trouba had 2 big hits. For as much as he struggled, still dishing out the physicality, 2 big hits while the Rangers were shorthanded, knocked at least one of his opponents down to the ice. You had a huge hit by Braden Schneider at the Ranger blue line on Forrester. He knocked him down to the ice. You had Schneider wasn't done, not too long after this. I think it was the same shift. 2 big hits back-to-back on the same player. First, he knocked him to the ice. Then he knocked him into the boards in the corner there on the Rangers side of the ice. And it was fun. This is as much fun as I had watching the Rangers in this game all night. And you're thinking, all right, maybe they're picking it up. Maybe they can get back into this. We had Alexis Lafreniere putting a really good wrist shot off the post in the middle of all this. So you're starting to think like, okay, another third period comeback. This could be in the cards. Unfortunately, the dagger, you've got Kate scoring to make the score 4-1 in favor of the Flyers. Adam Fox pinched. He was trying to hold the puck in the Rangers, or the Flyers zone rather. The Flyers get by him. And just some miscommunication. Panarin was trying to get back and keep Cates from getting to the net. And as a result of that, Lindgren kind of held his position, never really went after Cates. I think he thought that Panarin would be able to cut him off. Panarin not able to do so. Cates goes right to the net, scores from the doorstep. Another goal surrendered by the Rangers on the rush, and another shift in which, it's not all Trouba and Miller. Obviously, Fox and Lindgren, this was not the best shift of their season either. Like I said, I just feel like the Ranger defensemen haven't been at their best in these last couple of games here. I know they haven't been at their best in the last couple of games here. And I think anybody watching these games and somebody that's watched this team all season can probably figure that out pretty easily as well. But yeah, just a rough performance, a bad game for the Rangers. And like I said, I do hope that they can pick it up after this. The Rangers have been really good bouncing back after a loss. Obviously, they've now lost 2 in a row, which, by the way, for everybody that thinks the sky is falling right now, this is the first time the Rangers have had back-to-back regulation losses in almost 3 months. So just calm down a little bit, okay? It's a bad game. It happens. Better now than in the playoffs, and better now, while you still have 2 games left in the regular season, and you can hopefully turn things back around, get these points, get the best seed in the Eastern Conference, maybe the President's Trophy. You'd need a little bit of help from Dallas at this point to do that. But bottom line, they're still in a really good spot here, despite these 2 losses. This is their first, really bad game, and I don't even remember how long. They do nothing but win. So, some games are better than others, but you're going to have nights like this where you're just not at your sharpest. And you know what? Glass half full. Hopefully it's a wake-up call for this team before the postseason begins. So figure we can call it there. I did want to mention, though, that Adam Fox, before the game, was presented with the 3rd annual Rod Gilbert Mr. Ranger Award. This is, as I said, the 3rd time given out. It goes to the player who best honors Rod's legacy by exemplifying leadership qualities, both on and off the ice, and making a significant humanitarian contribution to his community. Trouba won it last year, and he's very charitable, and so is Chris Kreider, and Kreider won it the year before that in the inaugural year. I think these have been awesome choices all 3 years that this award has existed. As for Fox, he and some of his teammates hosted a junior Rangers hockey clinic in February at the MSG Training Center, and they raised $20,000 for Tackle ALS and the Garden of Dreams Foundation. So awesome stuff there. And Fox also was one of several Rangers and several professional hockey players that participated in the Shoulder Check Showcase in Stamford, Connecticut during the offseason. I was fortunate enough to get to attend that event. It's not a big rink. I guess it's kind of big for like a high school rink, but it's certainly not a big rink. And it was packed. Couldn't fit anybody else in there. Just a really cool thing. It's basically just it's a glorified scrimmage. They're not like checking each other or competing fiercely, but just a really cool event. And it's for Shoulder Check, which is an initiative inspiring young men and women to commit to supporting one another through small acts that have a big impact. And, Fox was there. Jonathan Quick was there. He didn't participate, but he was there in street clothes. Kreider and Mika were both there. I feel like Trouba was announced. I know he's done things like that in the past. He was announced to be there, but if I'm remembering this correctly, I don't think he ended up actually playing in this game. Brett Berard, a Ranger prospect, was there. Trevor Zegras was there. A whole bunch of other players as well. It's really a cool event, and it's just cool to see Ranger players getting out, getting involved. raising money for some obviously worthwhile causes. And Adam Fox, rightly recognized with this presentation here. Very cool to see. He almost wiped out on his way to go get the trophy. So that would have been unfortunate. He almost pulled Elias Anderson. If you guys remember a few years ago, Elias Anderson tripped over, I believe it was like a cable wire for one of the cameras, and it just wiped out during the opening night introduction. So I'm glad Fox was able to catch himself and not fall down and certainly not get hurt. And we can all laugh about it now. But yeah, good stuff. And it's great to see him get recognized there. And also want to mention Artemi Panarin. We got to keep an eye on him for the rest of the regular season here because he's trying to chase down Jaromir Jagr. Now, he did get the only goal of this game for the Rangers, so that does give him an 11-game point streak, and it puts him at 117 points on the season. He is now 6 behind Jaromir Jagr with only 2 games left. Very, very difficult to pull that off. Not impossible. We've seen Artemi Panarin have 4-point games, 3-point games very often, and he's been hot lately, and it's at least doable. I mean, we'll see what happens, but he'll at least have his chance, but obviously going to have to rally in these last 2 games if he's going to get there. He may not get that record, but he did get another Ranger record that I thought was very impressive and certainly worth sharing here, and they talked about it on the broadcast, so I'm sure a lot of you saw it last night as well. Panarin this season has at least 1 point in 65 games this season, and he now stands alone. That is a new New York Rangers franchise record. 3 players in the past have had 64 points. So before last night, Panarin was in a 4-way tie with Jaromir Jagr from 2005-2006, Mark Messier from 1991-92, and Mike Rogers from 1981-1982. So yeah, good stuff. Panarin now stands alone in that stat and just a phenomenal season. There's really not much else to say about it. He's just been brilliant, and obviously we hope that continues into the playoffs. There were also, at the end of this game, we want Rempe chants, and there were some boos when the game ended. We want Rempe. I get that. Obviously, he does provide this team a spark, and I think the fans are going to get their wish on Saturday against the Islanders. To begin with, they've lost 2 games in a row. They could use a little bit of a spark, a little bit of a jump. On top of that, the Islanders had a couple of questionable moments in their last game against the Rangers. So I think the Rangers are going to make sure everybody's protected and that Matt Rempe is on the ice. We'll see how they look to go, but I would be very surprised if he's not out there. As far as the boos, I mean, let's not go nuts. I get it. They were bad in this game. I mean, there's no sugarcoating it. This was a bad performance by the Rangers. Have you seen them this season? Have you seen how well that they've played? Maybe that's part of the reason why fans boo when they're there. Because, look, these tickets aren't cheap, right? Even if you're sitting in the last row, you're going to dump a good amount of money going to these Ranger games. And, the fans there, they're probably thinking like, oh, man, we've been dominating all season. And they come out and they play like this when I'm here and I'm spending my hard-earned money on this game. So I can understand it to a degree. But again, let's not go nuts. You've got a team that is still sitting on top of the Eastern Conference. And as I mentioned earlier, the first back-to-back regulation losses for the Rangers in 3 months. I think they'll be fine, and I think you'll see a solid response by this Ranger team against the Islanders on Saturday. Very much looking forward to seeing how they do there. Hopefully they can correct some of these things, bounce back with some authority, and get another 2 points and continue their march to the playoffs. But that will do it for today, guys. Once again, if you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that is @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.